Hello, everyone. Welcome to another SDH Network 1v1. I had the opportunity to catch up with former Atlanta United player and MLS legend in Dax McCarty. We talked everything about him starting out in his new job with MLS Season Pass this season, as well as the transition from going from being a player to then being a part of the media and what that transition is like. And then we also talked a little bit about this upcoming 30th season for MLS. Without further ado, here's Dax McCarty. Dax, I think my first question is, how has retirement life been for you?
It's been great. Retirement life is awesome. You don't have to run fitness with the other guys. You don't have to chase around a bunch of teenagers. The aches and pains are more muted, I'll say. You know how aging is. You still wake up with a sore back every now and then, but now you don't have to put that sore back and those sore legs through like rigorous workouts every day. I'll still try my best to stay in good shape, but it's been really nice. Been able to spend a lot of time with the family. Just got back from a quick little ski trip where I was teaching my 5-year-old how to ski. I mean, just little things like that where you can't ever really do that, in preseason or during the season. Definitely things that I'm very grateful for.
And I think my next one is, so how did the offer come up for you to do Apple and MLS Season Pass?
Well, I mean, that's a long, winding road with how we got there, but I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version. It's essentially just I started thinking about what post retirement life looks like, years ago, and it wasn't ever because I thought I would have to retire in my early 30s. It was just because I didn't want to be one of those athletes who um, older age and retirement sneaks up on you, and then you're kind of just left not knowing exactly what direction you want to go. So, towards the latter stages of my career, when I was in Nashville and Atlanta, I really started to be intentional about the different things that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to stay involved in the game. That was always priority number one for me. I mean, I love soccer and I love being involved with it. So, I knew that it would be something in the game, and I explored both, coaching, media, potentially, joining a front office. And when I added everything up, the media stuff really called to me more in terms of what my heart was telling me to do. The coaching life is a difficult life, and if you're a player and you do become a coach, then your schedule, it pretty much doesn't change, and then it actually gets significantly worse with the time commitment that you have to be prepared for, and that's not for everybody. And I just decided, with a young family with 2 boys, my wife being super supportive and following me everywhere I went, that instead of living that nomadic coaching lifestyle that sometimes coaches have to live, I wanted to have a home base. I wanted to be settled. I wanted to be able to say that my kids can grow up in one house for the most part. And so that's what I decided to commit to the media, because you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you work, where you work, the travel schedule. And so, yeah, the conversations with MLS went pretty fast. I'd been in contact with them a few times throughout the last couple of years, just kind of they were picking my brain. I was telling them my interests and that I wanted to keep playing. But everything kind of came together in Atlanta when I knew in the summer that it was going to be my last year. We didn't speak officially until after the season ended, but we got a deal done pretty quickly because they knew it was what I wanted. And I think they wanted the same thing. And then, I'm on a flight out to MLS Cup as my first official gig, which is pretty cool if you really think about it. Being able to say that your first official job as a member of the media is covering the final game of the season you just retired from. So definitely a surreal experience, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity. And I feel like a rookie all over again. I'm really excited.
I was actually going to ask you about the MLS Cup, just
Yeah.
how quickly it was. What was that experience like, getting your first taste of being on camera with MLS Season Pass?
Well, it was a wonderful experience, if not a little bit stressful. I literally agreed to my deal with MLS and my contract on the Friday before MLS Cup on the Saturday, and so I flew out on the last flight out of Atlanta. I got into LA at about midnight, and it was all a whirlwind from there. I woke up at 7 in the morning, get to the stadium to prepare for the game and meet everyone. And there's probably, I mean, I don't know if people actually realize this. I certainly didn't, but um, putting together a big production is a lot more than just a couple of camera operators and some talent and one producer. There's like 50, 60 people involved in a big production, maybe even more, maybe 100. And, just meeting everyone, trying to remember names, going over the show and the rundown of how, everything is going to go. Just coming up with storylines and for the game and, being available. And it was just a whirlwind, and it was a really great experience. And it was kind of like something I've been hearing a lot is, in this job, you kind of drink out of a fire hose. And that's kind of what it's like. You just take on board all this information and you try to articulate that to the viewer, to the audience, as quickly and succinctly as you possibly can. So really cool experience, and definitely one I'll never forget.
That's something I'm gonna have to use because that's really, really accurate with what you have to do,
Right?
especially being on air and doing
Exactly.
stuff. Like it's crazy. Like the stuff you have to know and like what you have to spew out. It's nuts. I've never heard that one before. I might have to
Yeah, it's a good one.
take that one from you.
Here,
That was
take it, steal it.
when looking back, I mean, being a player and now being on air, what were some of the biggest challenges for you when you made that transition? Or for you, was it a little bit easier? Because it's different for everyone.
Right. I'd say that the transition hasn't been too bad at all. Like I said before, I was very intentional in the way I went about preparing to go into the media world. I said yes to almost every media obligation that was offered me to myself when I was in Chicago, Nashville, Atlanta, even New York. Going back to my New York days, I just really wanted to make good relationships and show my personality a little bit, because I feel like in this day and age, especially, when you're a player, you can get your voice out there in a number of different ways. You can show people who you are off the field in a number of different ways. And so I wanted to make sure that, my face was out there, my voice was out there. How I spoke about the game with my teammates was how I spoke about the game with the media, because I think there's too many athletes who, and this is not a slight on these athletes, but there are a lot of athletes out there that just don't really care, and they just don't really want to give, media members the time of day when it comes to trying to answer questions or, break games down. And so that's fine. Some people are like that. That's some people's personality, but that was never mine. I was always an open book, for better or worse. And I think that really, translates well when you're trying to transition from playing to then talking about the game. And so I started my own podcast. Obviously, that's been a great help with trying to get me prepared for what's to come. And so just being in front of the camera as much as possible, speaking about the game as much as I can, and having fun. I feel like, honestly, like I'm not just saying this, I feel like other than playing the game, being able to talk about the game with smart, like-minded people is the second best job in sports. And so I'm just, like I said before, really grateful. I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know it's not going to be, smooth sailing the whole time. Like I said, I'm a rookie all over again. And so I've got to ask questions. I've got to learn. I've got to be open-minded. And I'm just going to do my best to make sure that I'm authentic. That's the one thing that I think keeps popping up in conversations I have, is just be yourself, be authentic. And I think that'll translate to the viewer.
And you got some good names to help you out with that. You got Kevin Egan, you got Sasha Kleshtin, you got all of them who've been doing it for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Kevin's great. We know Kevin, he's a friend of the network. He helped me actually in my early years of doing this. I met him in 2021. So
I'm not just saying this, but the entire MLS 360 crew is brilliant. Obviously I know Sasha Kleshtin and Bradley Wright Phillips very well. So that transition has been pretty seamless. Obviously we have a great rapport right off the bat. I think Kaylin Kyle is one of the best in the business. She can host. She can be an analyst. She's very knowledgeable about the game. And then Kevin, like you said, for me, I knew Kevin just because we crossed paths before in randomly in the soccer world, but also, living in Atlanta and being able to see him and be around him a little bit. Um, I didn't realize how great at his job he actually is until you see how he prepares. You see how he treats everyone. He treats everyone with the utmost respect, whether it's the top producer or his coworkers or a showrunner or the person who's setting up our mics. Like he's just he's been a great influence for me for the last 2 months in just asking questions, helping me through with different things, picking his brain on different ways to articulate things. He's just been wonderful. So I truly feel like I couldn't be a part of a better crew and a better cast. I'm just gonna try my best to keep up with all of them because they're all really really good at their jobs.
Yeah, everything that they do over there up at MLS 360 and Apple, they've done a phenomenal job, and especially with promoting the game and everything. And the season's going to be fun. And speaking of the season, we'll go ahead and talk about kind of what you're expecting from this season. What are some of the biggest things that you're excited to see about from this season from all over MLS?
Oh man, there's too much to talk about. I will try to keep it fairly brief. For me, the biggest, this might be slightly biased, and I admit that. The biggest storyline for me is easily Atlanta United. The amount of money that they've spent in this transfer window. Garth Lagerwey is putting his money where his mouth is, or Arthur's money where their mouth is. And so they said they would spend, and they did. Obviously, Miguel Almiron's return is a major, major talking point for me. I'm absolutely fascinated to see how he does in the sequel, because obviously the original with him and Joseph was it was must see TV, and so Atlanta United's attack, obviously adding Emmanuel Latte-Lot as the number 9, the most expensive transfer fee in MLS history. Um, it's going to be box office stuff, and there's going to be pressure. Atlanta United always comes with pressure, but now I think that's ramped up, and the expectations are high with a new coach and some very, very good players. And so I think Atlanta United is going to be a fascinating watch in the in the season. Inter Miami, how do they recover from a very disappointing end to their year? Obviously, the best team, regular season team in MLS history, setting the points record, and then, kind of floundering in the playoffs and losing to an Atlanta United team that was, quite frankly, probably overmatched in a lot of ways, but managed to get the upset. And so I think that they have a bitter taste in their mouth with how the season ended. Be fascinated to see if the new players that they brought in, some younger players that maybe are a little bit less experienced, can come in and make a big difference for them. And then how do Messi, Suarez, and Busquets hold up? They're all a little bit older. Messi had a pretty bad injury last year with Argentina, and he missed a significant amount of time. If Messi stays healthy for 25 to 30 games, I think it's realistic to imagine him winning MVP again and setting lots and lots of records in the league. That's how good I think he still is. So fascinated to watch Inter Miami. And then out west, I'm fascinated with two teams that were very bad last year, San Jose Earthquakes and Austin FC. I think both of those teams are going to make the playoffs and be much, much better than they were. Obviously, Bruce Arena coming back into MLS, I think it's a great thing for the league. I think that he will want to end his career on a high note, and so I'm fascinated to see how San Jose does. And then Austin, spending $10 million on Brandon Vasquez to be your number 9. I think that's a great acquisition. But the transfer fee, again, it comes with a lot of pressure. And so I think Austin will be better. I expect them to be better. But there's a lot of pressure on Brandon Vasquez's shoulders. And then the LA Galaxy are the defending champions. They have so many question marks going into the season. I mean, I think they lost 4 or 5 starters. They lost the MLS Cup MVP. Obviously Ricky Puig, one of the best players in the league. He's not going to be back for a number of months. So there's a lot of questions surrounding the Galaxy at this moment in time. And they were the rightful champions of MLS last year. They were brilliant pretty much all season, played a really exciting, aesthetically pleasing brand of soccer. I think it's going to be a challenging year for Greg Vanney to try to make the pieces fit together and navigate through these injuries. Joseph Paintsel is out for the beginning of the season. And so I think Greg Vanney is one of the top 3 coaches in MLS. So I think he will be able to navigate that. I still think the Galaxy are going to be one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the West. But again, there's a lot of question marks surrounding that team. So those for me are the big storylines. And of course, season 30 in MLS, San Diego, 30th team coming into the league. How do they fare? I obviously, as an expansion team, know what it's like. I have San Diego last in the West. I hope they prove me wrong. It's just hard to know with expansion teams. It's just hard to know how they're going to do because this is a group of players that have never been together. So I'd love nothing more for them to prove me wrong and make the playoffs and make a big splash, but that remains to be seen.
That's the biggest question mark for me too, is definitely what San Diego is going to bring, because, they brought in these players and you look at it and you say, oh, well, this seems like it could work, but expansion teams, it's so all over the place. Cause we've had experiences where expansion teams are bottom of the table. Then we have expansion teams who make it all the way to the top and they win MLS Cup and they're able to do it in their second year. It's very, very, it could be interesting to see how it fares.
Anyone who says that they can accurately predict an MLS season before it starts is a fool. It's not possible. I don't care what anyone says. You can come up with, a couple of teams who you think are going to be great, the usual suspects that have great coaches and that spend a lot of money, typically are very good. And then the rest of the conferences, it's a crapshoot. I mean, every team, I think, feels like they can make the playoffs, right? And when you feel that way, that is what MLS wants. It's parity. And it's just a very difficult thing to do, to ask people to accurately predict in the preseason where things are going to shake out. So fascinated to see how San Diego does. Like I said, I would be the happiest guy in the room if they prove me wrong.
Well, Dax, I wanted to say thank you so much again for coming on to the network to chat about the 30th season. You making your first ever appearance, not ever, you did MLS Cup, but
sure.
Start of the
MLS 360, first
MLS
time.
360, first run. I know that everyone here in Atlanta is looking forward to seeing you on there and looking forward to seeing your journey with it. And it's going to be a ton of fun.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I'm actually kind of bummed that I'm not going to be in Atlanta for that first game. It's going to be electric. I mean, I'm sure I'll see it on Twitter, but someone needs to record, when they introduce Miguel Almiron to the crowd again and just hear the roar. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. I'm excited to watch that game.
Don't worry. I'll send a video to you.
Great.
Don't worry.